as soon as the fight was over, she took her gloves off, the decision was read, and she announced to Daniel Cormier, who was being the in-ring interviewer, that she has retired from mixed martial arts, 35 years of age.
34.
I guess she'll be 35 soon.
Yes.
So let's get to this. BC, very simple question, but a big one.
Yeah.
What did she bring to the sport, and what is her legacy?
She was a star, and I think she was, certainly the first star of this smaller weight class here in the women's side. Rousey was the face of women getting into the cage, but we soon quickly learned that 115 pounds was the division in the women's game, and she was the face of this longer than anyone, not just in terms of her star power, but in terms of her success. Is she the greatest 115-pound fighter of all time? That's going to be, she's in the discussion, right? It's going to be whose flavor you like, because they all fight each other and they all trade wins and losses. But she had the most substantial, longest, most meaningful reign of 5 consecutive decisions. She had runs where she was dominating and blowing people away, and then as the competition caught up, she put on incredible, even 50-50 fights, or even in some of her biggest wins, think Carolina, think even Andrade. She really had to fight off some real opposition. But, Luke, 1A of her resume is, the most successful women's 115-pound champion of all time. And maybe, after Rousey, the star of the lower women's weight classes for sure. But her 1B, in terms of her true legacy, is she's a freaking warrior. And it wasn't as if that wasn't always true, but it really took the Zhang Weili fight for us to start to say that, right? People weren't saying that before that. And now you've got the 2 Weili fights, and to see her, like, JJ going out like this, and I'm the biggest JJ fan there is. Let me pour one out for you, okay? It was tough. It was emotional. The speech afterwards, thanking the UFC, it was classy. She says, I want to be a mom. Everyone can get behind that. But like, she is a friggin' warrior. So to go out this way on her face first, it's actually not a negative, Luke. It's actually not like, it's sort of like, you know what I mean? Like, you earned the chance to go out like that in a #1 contenders fight, in a rematch of the greatest female fight of all time, because that's sort of who she became. She was dominant champion for most of her run, and a technician and a hustler. But maybe it was the heart and stamina she showed against Claudia in the rematch that opened her eyes. But it didn't really come full bloom until that 2020 war against Weili, that we're looking at, yes, a star and a champion, but one of the most elite blood and guts fighters at this level that we've seen. I mean, she's got that blood, Luke. You can say whatever you want about her, but you cannot ever question the toughness and the willing to come back and fight. I mean, that almost supersedes the success she had as a champion in my eyes at this point.
Yeah, I actually have a bit of a different view, and it's not that I disagree, but the way I would look at it is, I feel like her legacy, whether she'll be the greatest strawweight ever, to your point, is debatable because Rose is out there, but the 5 title defenses, by the way, I wanted to make this point. Listen to the company she's in. If you have 5 title defenses, and I grant different eras, different weight classes, okay, fine. But here are the ones with 4 or less. Pat Miletich, Frank Shamrock, Tyron Woodley, Renan Barão, Chuck Liddell, Israel Adesanya, Alexander Volkanovski, BJ Penn, Max Holloway, Stipe Miocic, Habib Nurmagomedov, Chris Weidman, Benson Henderson, Frankie Edgar, Cain Velasquez, Dominic Cruz, and on and on
Nico
and on.
Montano.
Those
4 or less, bro. Okay.
She even have 4 UFC appearances, 4
Put some
UFC
respect
weigh-ins
on her name. I mean, come on.
But dude, in all seriousness, her name in terms of title defenses supersedes those, right? Again, different weight classes, different eras. Still, that's the kind of company she's in, #1. But the biggest one for me, BC, is yes, all the things you spoke to, I would not disagree with one bit, but I actually feel like it's a little bit more of a historically significant role, which is to say, she, to me, is arguably one of, if not the most important female fighter post-Ronda Rousey. And the reason why I would say that is, yes, Ronda had her other contemporaries. Holly Holm did well after her. But remember, even when Ronda checked out after Amanda Nunes, it took a while for Amanda Nunes' popularity to take off. And Ronda and Joanna kind of overlapped a little bit there in 2015, 2016, but that was really when Joanna began to take off. Joanna didn't make her UFC debut until 2015, I believe. And it was only when there was a bit of a transition period. Yes, other female bantamweight fighters like Miesha Tate and like some other ones, they also carried it. I don't mean to say she is the sole, Statue of Liberty torch out there, but I think the fans, when they were looking, who is the next female star that we could really gravitate to, especially outside of that bantamweight orbit, dude, that was when she was the boogie woman, surging through, tearing Jessica Penne's face up, doing those things at weigh-ins. They gave her the Ultimate Fighter for those reasons.
Dude, she was scary. She had like the gnarly long hair. She was just sort of like...
As Ronda was kind of fading out of the sport, Joanna was fading, or I should say, surging in, and I believe was very instrumental in making sure there were other stars in other divisions inside of women's MMA who fans could gravitate to. It just so happens, to feed into your point, she was this, this like witch doctor.
She was a savage.
And she could strike and do what she did to Carla Esparza. Like, it wasn't just that she beat her. Dude, like, she mugged her and then followed up with what she did against Jessica Penne. That, to me, that role of after Ronda kind of fades out, oh, is it just going to be the Ronda Rousey show and when she goes? Here it was, outside of her division, another woman could fight in a totally different way than Ronda and really prove that there was something special going on.
Absolutely. Now let me potentially be critical here. This, Joanna might be my favorite fighter. Seriously, like I love the warrior spirit, the savagery, and just the strut. I mean, she walks around like the shit don't smell. Look, we know that. I'm already saying she's among the greatest of all time, male or female. Her 5 title defenses prove that, okay? But did she rely too much in the second half of her career when, to be fair, she did lose 5 of her last 7 fights, albeit most of those title fights, 5-round wars, what have you. Did she rely too much on the savagery and warrior spirit in the second half of her career and not enough on the evolution of her game? Because the major thing she lacked was knockout ability, right? She always overcame that with guts, killing people with cardio and just being a technician, a volume technician, right? Like, not counterpunching, just flurries in and out, all that. Could she have been even more is my real question. If it had been more about the full evolution of her game as the people around her got better, she was still able to bite down Luke. And as we saw against Weili in the first fight, come as close as you can to winning back the championship. But could she have been even more? Or is it just sort of, be happy we saw one of the greatest ever do it?
I would say more so the latter for me. I think the issue with her well-roundedness, you know how I feel about it. Like, you always have to ask the question, not are you well-rounded, not can you do different things. Outside of your A game, can your B and C game beat elite fighters? That's really the question. No, her B and C game cannot beat elite fighters.
Which we saw against Valentina, where once it was obvious she wasn't going to be able to take control of the terms of that fight, it was over.
In fairness to Valentina, she actually has a B and C game that can, to some extent, allow her to do that a little bit better. So no, I do think that there's a fair criticism. Again, none of these fighters are perfect. This is going to be what it's going to be. She was transitioning over from Thai boxing, so take it for what it's worth. But yes, that is something of a larger question. But like, at that point, it gets to like impugning her training. I don't know how she was training. I'm going to guess she trained pretty fucking hard. And so it's just hard to learn those skills a little bit later in your athletic life relative to the needs of the division. But I'll say also, whatever she lacked, she beat Claudia Gadelha. Gadelha had a huge advantage over on those other portions of the game, but not enough to get over. Yes.
That rally and their rematch? Like,
Crazy.
I mean, the heart that Joanna showed against Carolina, even though she was leading, she was taking damage. She went to the hospital after that. I mean, she had to put herself into some wars. And again, the backbone always won out, and that's what made her super special. But even as the sport kind of evolved past her, she was still able to hang on, always took the biggest fights available. And I give her respect for not only taking off the 2 years because she realized she needed it, but using that window to negotiate herself back into a huge position, but then at the same time walking away on her own terms. You have to applaud anybody because, she could have hung on and been a name.
Yeah, the last thing I would want to see is her, I guess she could keep going, but I always prefer, like, if you're getting face planted at, 35, 34, whatever it is, after a long layoff like that, I think it's the right call. I really do. These guys are human. She wants to be a mom. She wants to have good quality of life. Listen, if things are beginning to go where you're not just losing, right? But then you're getting, I know she got stopped against Rose, I understand, but like that was a weight cut thing. But I'm saying if you're getting viciously stopped and you're 35 years of age, right around it, and you've never really been stopped quite like that for those kinds of reasons, the specific ones, I recommend doing something else, and this is perfect timing. I wanted to read some stats here.
Yeah, isn't she up there in most time in the octagon in terms of?
I don't have that, but here's what I do have. She has 10 wins, which is tied for most in strawweight history. This is from MMA Junkie. She has 6 title fight wins, most in strawweight history. She is one of 3 undefeated champs in the sense that she was the only strawweight to win the belt with an undefeated record. And she's landed 1,724 significant strikes, which is 3rd most in UFC history, speaking to the volume that she brought. Remember, they used to call her Joanna Champion, Joanna Violence?
It's Joanna Legend now, Luke. It really is. Okay.
I saw your tweet about that.
No, but seriously, going out on her own terms, which means a lot to me, and she also kind of like, remember she was a bully in the first Rose fight, and she kind of took on a villainous persona?
Yes.
She's kind of repaired that too over time. Not that that necessarily matters, but like everyone respects her. You saw all the tweets, like everyone, walked her off with the full respect. And that means something, Luke. That means more in some ways than wins, losses, and championship. When you have that like true hardcore fan core respect. And she fought for that. It was clear. She fought for she fought for us to look at her as the badass she is.
Yes.
That meant more to her than anything.
Yes, and it was interesting that, you're right. She was the bully, which people loved until she tried to bully someone else people also loved, and then it kind of backfired with the results. But I think she retires today, and I'm assuming she's probably going to stay retired. I think she retires today as something of and I say this again in a praiseworthy way, as an elder statesman.
Yeah.
As someone who's been around, put their arm around the game. Speaking of which, Kovalkiewicz had a rebound because of her. Yep. She was trying to lift everyone else around her up. And I think that will also be part of her legacy and how she is viewed long term as well. But certainly as a competitor and as a position that she occupied in that waning / post Rousey era, one of the most important figures you could really point to in mixed martial arts history.